Welcome to tonight's live stream. We are going to be working on a pretty simple project. This is kind of a cross between a beginner and an intermediate project, but I'm going to try to simplify it for beginners, and we'll just kind of make our own version of this project with more of a beginner-based mentality. It'd be great for an anniversary project, so if you're looking for something that can be personalized, this one is great. The open area here in the heart would be perfect to add some personalization to this piece, you know, add some names and dates and all that. Normally when we talk about beginner wood burnings, we really rely more heavily on some gentle outlining to give structure to your project. As you develop into higher skill sets, you want to get away from those heavy outlines and try to rely more so on just value and shading to create the image. But I might do a mix here. I'm not afraid of the lines right now, just because that is a very easy thing for beginners to follow. I think challenging thing about this wood burning is going to be the eyes and the feet. So the reason I say the eyes are going to be challenging is just because they're tiny. I want to burn around those highlights. If you find that you make it a whole black blob, you know, that's not the end of the world. You can always kind of pick out some highlights or add some light colored pencil or paint for a highlight. So don't get too hung up on if the eyes turn out to be a blob, like a black blob. That's okay. I'm just going to use the upper part of the shading point. I'm going to go around that white highlight. And that's going to be one of the trickiest things that we're going to do tonight. Is just burn right around that. And then I'm going to make a little bit wider of a border. And so there's our eyes with a little bit of a highlight. If you're more of an advanced student or an artist, you don't have to do the outlines. Just go ahead and shade. You can make it softer shading. But I'm going to simplify things a little bit with more of a beginner style. And this pattern is available over on Wood Burning University, so if you'd like to burn along with this, you can. It's a beginner pattern, so all of our patterns over on Wood Burning University are organized by skill level. So they're easy to find. Then if you follow us on our paid platform, Mighty Networks, you get the pattern for free. As we try to strive for more realism, I'm not going to be putting in these outlines, but this is just a really fun project that we can get started on. And it's neat because the outlines definitely give it a different overall look. So even if you're more advanced of an artist and you want the outlines, go for it. Okay. So just a quick little sketch of the main features, some of the areas that I added when I transferred the image onto the wood. If you don't know how to transfer an image onto the wood, I do have some YouTube videos that talk specifically about that you're able to take a look at. Lisa's asking, would it ruin the burn to only outline one bird? It's probably going to throw it off a little bit as far as the continuity. I would say if you outline the one bird, you probably ought to outline the other one. Now you will notice that when I'm outlining here, it's very, very gentle and soft. I'm not putting in heavy, deep lines just because I just want light, delicate lines. This is a very dainty, beautiful piece, and I want to kind of mimic that feeling. So find a point that you can control, and you can see the difference here. I would not want to use the flow point on a project like this because it's too chunky, it's too big. So I'm just using the upper tip of the shading point. You could possibly use the mini flow point. That might be small enough for some of these details, but yeah, just want to go a little bit lighter on the outlining. I just want it to be more delicate. And if you struggle to be able to control your burner, make sure you turn the temperature down, and that will help a lot to give you more control over the pen. Yes, I do have the pen on the highest temp setting right now, but I'm really comfortable with this pen, and I know kind of how to move it more quickly to manage the temperature. Okay, so here we have our birds just gently outlined. We're gonna go ahead and continue on with the rest of the piece. I think I'm gonna stick with this same point. I like how things are turning out, so I'm not gonna use the mini faux point. Everything is very dainty and delicate. I know that when we did a beginner project here a while ago, we were working on the snowman and the little deer. So we made a couple little coasters or ornaments, whatever you want to call them. And this we kind of experimented with heavier outline and then lighter lines inside, and it just gives it a different look to it. And this is a very delicate piece, so I wanted a finer point, whereas these are more kind of fun and playful, and so they have definitely chunkier points. So depending on what you're trying to create as a beginner, really think about which point might be best for your subject matter. Something fun, I would definitely go more bold like this, versus we're doing a more of a delicate piece, so try and pick up a smaller point. I hope that makes sense. I'll probably just focus on a lot of the line work for right now and give you guys a start on that, because if all you do as a beginner is the line work, that is totally fine. So we'll get the entire piece kind of finished out with just doing gentle lines. And when you're ready to advance beyond lines, that's fine too. Another thing to consider as a beginner, this is a 5 by 7 inch piece. So if you find working on something this small is too difficult, pick maybe a simpler subject or make it into a bigger wood burning. Some people, especially when they first start burning, are a little bit, maybe overwhelmed with a large piece. But if you take a large piece of wood and you start with a simple design like this one, that gives you enough room to really kind of play with the lines and not be too concerned about whether they're too big or too thin, too thick or too thin. It would be difficult to do a wood burning of this subject on something smaller than a 5 by 7. So really think about the size of the project that you're creating, number one, and number two, how intricate your project will be. If you try to create a really intricate project on a tiny piece of wood, you kind of take away your margin for error. It's easy to make a mistake and have it really mess up an area. So I'm going to turn this sideways just to get these curved lines of the heart. Some people love working on big stuff. Some people love working on miniatures. So really kind of play around with the different sizes of wood burnings and see which one you like the best. And so when I do straight lines like this, as you can see, I like to burn them in little tiny sections. I don't usually make them in one full motion, just because I like a little bit more control and I don't want my lines to kind of go crazy. Here's some of our little heart-shaped flowers. Yeah, you can write names or initials in the middle of the heart. Yes, that's why I left that open, was so that it could be personalized. This would be a great project. You could use this as an anniversary gift or a wedding gift. I love art for art, but I also like kind of a practical nature too. I am kind of softening up the lines back here. These ones were more crisp. I was rocking the point up a bit more, and the flowers in the background are just a little softer. I'm rocking the point down, and to give you, especially beginners, an idea of that. When I burn, If you rock the point up like this, you can get a really crisp line. If you drop it down and make it flatter, your line is going to be a little softer. So there you can kind of see the difference between that. So the birds are more crisp lines and the flowers are softer lines. If you are a beginner and you're just learning wood burning, this might be a great place to stop. As we talked about earlier, you can go ahead, you can add color. I've got some videos out there on adding color of different types. You can add color pencil, acrylic paint, you can add watercolors. Keep in mind though, if you do anything with too much water, you're going to want to treat the wood and seal it first. If I do watercolors, I'll treat the wood with a clear gesso first and let it dry at least 24 hours, and then you can basically paint on this like you would watercolor paper. You can put lots of water on it. It's not going to really mess up the wood. Colored pencils, you don't really need to add anything or do anything special. You can just start drawing right on the wood. Make sure you have a quality set of colored pencils. As much as I used Crayola, and when I was younger, they're a little bit too hard to work really well with the soft wood. Try to get something like Prismacolor or equivalent types of colored pencils. You don't need to get a big set. You can just get like a 12-point set, and that works just fine. Acrylic paint, if you just do very thin, watered down layers and washes of acrylic paint, you can paint directly onto the wood without treating it. If you want to use a lot of water with your acrylic paint, you probably ought to pre-treat the wood with a clear gesso before. But this would be just fine, just put in a name and a date and you're good to go. I'm going to start adding some really soft, simple shading. I'll keep it really basic. And we'll start with the birds. Now, you'll notice right now everything is pretty flat, that our overall image is flat like a coloring page. I will add shading to the birds and they should really pop off of the wood and look more three-dimensional when we're done. Okay, so I'm going to darken this little mask here. Just kind of fill it in. You don't need to worry too much about the texture of the feathers and all that. We are working on this little birdie. So whenever you do wood burnings of wings, we want to make sure that we have a slight shadow underneath. Like each time the wings fold under, you want the shadow to be just underneath the wings. Now, once we do the shadow underneath each overlapping wing, if you just pull that shadow down a little bit, it'll create a tiny gradient. And that will help to create some dimension on your feathers. And if you just remember that every time that they overlap, you're going to have a shadow underneath, and then just pull that gradient downward. If you were working with pencil, you would just kind of smudge it downward. So if that helps you to think of it that way, just give it a little smudge. And we have some darker values on the undercarriage of the bird, and kind of darker back here behind his head. I'm going to put in a slight gradient right there, pull it down. And let's see, I'm going to add a gradient swooping up from the feathers here. And a little bit, pull these gradients down across the wings. Okay, I'm going to really try to keep the shading simplified here. And tail feathers also have dark under each overlap. And then we can put in some more just gentle lines to make it look like there's more feathers. And we want to shade just below that branch. Now, little bird feet can be very fun. We just need to make sure that we have a shadow on the underside of each toe. kind of blend it upward and shade the top. But we want some of the highlights to be right here, kind of if they had knuckles, you know. The knuckles are going to be the closest to the viewer, so those are going to be the lighter ones. And if you don't like drawing or wood burning bird feet, just put flowers in front of them and hide their feet. Darken the mask. And the chin fluff. One other thing, if you are going to add color, you might want to add less wood burning. If you burn wood really, really dark, it becomes kind of sealed and almost waterproof to some extent. So if you have an area that you do want to add color, try to burn a little bit lighter in those areas, and that will give the color the ability to kind of sink in and hold on to the wood fibers a little bit more. But if you burn super, super dark and you try to add color over that, it's not going to take, the wood won't be able to take the color. So keep that in mind if you are going to add color. Burn a little bit less than you normally would. Shadows under the wings, and we'll just kind of pull those gradients down. And I'm going to add a few more tiny feathers in there just to break that up. Okay, so here we're getting just some little touch of shading on our feathered friends. Okay, so shadow on the underside of each toe. Ooh, that one kind of sunk in a little bit. More shading on the top and the bottoms, and a little bit lighter in the middle. So if you remember from just a little bit ago when I said everything looks pretty flat, now that we shaded the birds a little, you'll see that they're going to pop forward and be a little bit more noticeable. They're going to pop forward. I'm going to put in the branch, and we'll darken that up as well, and that'll pull forward. And I'm right-handed, so it's going to be a little bit of a difficult angle for me. But if I turn it like this and I'm right-handed, then I can get in here and do a nice crisp line on that branch. So keep in mind whether you're right-handed or left-handed too, and turn the wood to where it's easiest for you. Okay, so I want this branch to be quite dark. I'm probably going to put in one layer, and then I'll go back and I'll darken it up. Because with wood burning, you can always go darker, but you can't really go lighter very well. Okay, let's see. We're gonna go back over and darken up that border. Yeah, it's kind of a border. The shadow under the branch, we're gonna hit that with another layer and make it darker. Because I really want this branch to stand out. All right, so we have a nice dark shadow underneath that branch. Now let's blend our shading on the branch and just make it a little more blended out. So I'm pulling, it's a little bit small, but I'm just using a gradient. I'm just making it a little bit lighter as I go towards the top. Just kind of softening that really hard edge of the shadow, blending it. Okay. Now a little trick to make things look more rounded is add a slight bit of shading to the top or to the other side that you're working on. And that'll make it just look a little more rounded. Okay, there we are with our branch. Let's see her. We definitely took those birds from everything being nice and flat to now the birds really want to pull forward. I don't really want to do much more wood burning on them because if we do add color, we want, like I mentioned before, to leave some of that less burned. Then the wood has enough tooth to hold the pigment of what you're going to add on there. I'll add a touch of really soft shading on the flowers, and that won't take very long. Just a little dab here and there of shading on the flowers. Our branches are pretty light. If anything, there's a slight shadow on one side. You can put a little shadow on the underside of each branch. Just a hint of shading. And then some of the flowers have a little bit of a gradient from the base upward. So just do a flicking motion upward. And then inside of the flowers, you can add a little shading inside of those too for some depth. Yeah, just a little touch of shading. It doesn't take much. Try to keep a little bit of an idea of your light source. So if the light is coming from above, then we want to have some shading just on the lower side of the branches, at the base of each flower. It doesn't have to be perfect, just throw in a little bit of shading there. Okay, let's put in an antique border. These are, they're fun and they're actually quite very simple. You just want to follow the edge. There's a bevel here and we're just gonna take the shading point and kind of skate it along the edges and then fade it in a little bit. So same point, and we are just going to rock this up to where we travel along that outer edge there. Because it's beveled, you're just going to pick up the top edge of it. So just skate along that beveled edge. The flatter you hold the shading point, the bolder the line will be. Border, it really does add a lot of dimension too. Okay, so let's take a look really quick. So that's pretty fun. I like to kind of pull in and soften that a little more. So I'm just going to quickly go up and down along this edge, just laying the point kind of flat on the wood. But I'm going to pull these corners in. Just kind of go up and down really quickly just to give it a little bit of a softened value here. Antique it a little. And then we'll do the same thing here in the corners. Now this, is not maybe a beginner technique, but the border is. Certainly the border is very fun. It's very easy as long as you just skate along that beveled edge. It works really well. This might take a little bit more practice just to get used to the, yeah, don't burn the fingers. Just get used to how your point handles, because I have to move it pretty quick, or you can just turn the temperature down and really take your time. I just want a tiny bit of color on the corners. So I'm going to pull down. So going with the grain is a lot easier than going against the grain. The grain goes like this. I probably would not try to blend it sideways because it's not gonna look quite right. When you go against the grain, the burn looks a little bit different. So we're taking a beginner piece and we're adding some more complicated elements here, but that's okay. If you're a beginner, the tapping that you're hearing on the microphone is every time I put the point down on the wood, I touch down gently and then I lift off gently like an airplane landing and then taking off. That helps prevent the stop spots, because if I just set and move and lift, then I get those bad spots. But if I always keep the point in motion, that will keep your lines much more even. Yeah, if you've never done this kind of antique vignette appearance, definitely take some time, just practice without doing a intricate detailed burning first. Do the vignette, make sure it works out, experiment, have some fun with that, and then if it works out, then you can add your subject in later. Good. I like the antique-y vintage-ness of this piece. So I think I'm gonna make that heart, the outer heart, look a little bit 3D just by adding a touch of shading on the inside edge and the outside edge. I'll just add a bevel to the heart. So we're going to shade on the inside. Okay, there's a little bit of shading on the inner edge of that, and now let's add a little shading on the outer edge, and then we'll blend it together, and I'll make it look kind of poofy. Now we will just soften either side of that. Just kind of blend it. And that'll make it look a little rounded. If you wanted to make that more like really pop, you could darken up the inner edge of that one. Let's see, we can darken the little strings. And what about that heart? Let's make it maybe a little poofy too. So we're going to start with dark border. Okay, so we have a little bit of a three-dimensional heart here. That's very simple. Put in your darks along the outside and then just pull a gradient in towards the middle. We can kind of clean up those edges. Okay, let's blend that a little bit more. Okay, so guys, here we go. I think we're pretty good on this one. You could, just for something different, to make this heart, make it look like it's not see-through, it's not a frame, you could add a nice light shading in here, or a color or something to make it look like it's a solid heart instead of a frame. Just add something there to make it different than the background. But yeah, we took it from a very simple, very beginner kind of a design, just outline everything nice and light, and then we slowly built on a little bit of shading here and there. We didn't spend a lot of time on it. A 5 by 7 inch piece in about 2 hours. All right, well, thanks guys for being here. This was a very fun project, very cute. If you want the pattern, it's available on Wood Burning University. It's classified under the beginner patterns. If you want the pattern for free and you want access to all the other live streams, then take a look at our paid platform over on Mighty Networks. Alrighty guys, thank you very much for being here tonight, and I hope you have a fantastic week, and I will see you on Friday. Alright, thanks a bunch guys. Good night.